A good night of Shabbos, everyone. Pashas Vayetze Yaakov Beersheva Vayelech Harana. He left Beersheva. He went to Harana. We'll talk about that a little later. It's also the Shabbos, the Yom HaLedes, the birthday, and the Yortzeit of the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rav Dov Ber, known in Chabad circles as the Mittler Rebbe, meaning the middle Rebbe. During the lifetime of the next Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, his son-in-law, Reb Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, they would address the Balatanya as the Alter Rebbe, the old Rebbe. Then they would call the second Rebbe the Mittler Rebbe, the middle Rebbe, and the Tzemach Tzedek they called the Rebbe. That's when the names Alter Rebbe and Mittler Rebbe became part of the Chabad Lubavitch dictionary. This, after all, is a program of history, so it's important to know that. The next day, this Sunday, is Yud Kislev. In Chabad, we call this the Yom HaGeula, the Day of Redemption, because the Mittler Rebbe was released from jail, from prison, on this day. Briefly, he was ratted on. He was informed to the Tsarist government that he's involved in treason. He's supporting the Turkish government against the Russian government. And this was done, unfortunately, by someone who was at the time known as a Mesnagid, who didn't like Chassidim, who couldn't get over the whole Chassidim Mesnagdim issue. And he found ways of accusing the Mittler Rebbe, who is the one that moved the Chabad center from Liadi, the Alter Rebbe was, before he passed away. He passed away in Hadich, but his abode before he ran away from Napoleon's oncoming army, he moved to the Mittler Rebbe the year, I believe, after the Alter Rebbe passed away. He moved to Lubavitch. And Friedrich Rebbe writes that 102 years we were in Lubavitch. In other words, from 1813 to 1915. Rebbe Rashab left to Rostov in 1915, although the yeshiva was still there for a while, but the Rashab himself left. So it comes out to approximately 102 years. So the Mittler Rebbe was the one. So during the Mittler Rebbe's time is when we became known not just as Chabad Chassidim, Chabad Hasidus, but it became known as Lubavitcher Chassidim. Why? Because we our home, our base was in a little village called Lubavitchi. Lubavitch, different ways of pronouncing it and how it's written in different places. I just want to, because it's the Mittler Rebbe's special days, just talk for a few minutes a little bit about some of his innovations that he brought to Chabad Chassidus and how it applies to us today. So one thing that the Mittler Rebbe was very fond of was the proliferation of Hasidic thought and Hasidic writing. He would take a mimer of his father, the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya, that was 2, 3, 4 pages, and he wrote 10, 15 pages. Not only was it a quantitative difference, it was a qualitative difference in the sense that his arichas, his elaboration of ideas and concepts of his father, it was all his father's Torah, but the way he articulated it, both in writing and in speaking, it gave food for thought for the mind, and for the mind of the thinker. And that's why in Chabad, the deepest thinkers of Chassidus, those that are what they call maskilim, the haskalah of Chassidus, they emphasize the learning of the Mittler Rebbe's Chassidus. Later, the Rebbe Rashab kind of took over that, because his Maimorim, as the Rashbats, the Chassid of Tzemach Tzedek, said, he's known as he's the Rambam of Chassidus. Why is he the Rambam of Chassidus, the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe? because of his analytical style, splitting hairs and elaborating, explaining, and this was a very unique style. But the Rashab himself says that I took that from the Mittler Rebbe. So, for example, I was told that the Hasidim, Rabbi Simpson, Rabbi Jacobson, they were in Lubavitch in the early 1900s. What did they learn besides reviewing the Maimorim of the Rebbe Rashab, which he said on Shabbos and Yom Tov and all that? They learned the Mittler Rebbe's Chassidus. Because the depth of Chassidus, the Haskalah, was there. So, a simple lesson for us is we need to delve deeply into Hasidic thought. And that doesn't come from eating potato chips, popcorn, and playing golf. It warrants a serious study of time and effort and mind. You could say it's like not just learning the Gemara and not just learning Gemara and Rashi, but learning the Tosfos on the Gemara and more so the Maram Shif and to really go deeply into it. And it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of haravanya, a lot of effort. That's one point. The next chiddush, the next thing that the Mittler Rebbe brought to Chabad is this idea of formalizing Chabad in the sense of make your own minyan. If you're davening, I'm giving an example. They wrote to him that they're davening in shuls where it's Ashkenaz with Litvische and the Misnagdim, and they're really causing problems for the Lubavitchers. The Mittler Rebbe said, make your own minyan. And I always say this, it wasn't his style to combat and fight the Misnagdim. Following in his father's footsteps, even though they wanted to literally have the Alter Rebbe killed. That's why they informed on him. Well, it wasn't a game. They knew if they get him into jail, he'll be mincemeat, and it's finished. The Alter Rebbe didn't retaliate. Look at you get us a kodesh. The beginning, the Alter Rebbe says, what does he say over there? Don't put your hand on them. Don't say a word. The Eibishter knows what to do. God knows what to do. The Mittler Rebbe followed the same way. Even after he was being informed on and accused of treason, where a Yid clearly did that, he said, don't retaliate. But at the same time, you don't have to put up with their garbage. Excuse the expression. I mean to say, the garbage of that time, where all of a sudden we are villains because we say Natishach and we have different nuschois, the text ritual differences of tefillah, or we don't say v'shamru. So, Mittler Rebbe said, make your own minyan. And I take from this an important lesson for us, that there are times when you're not wanted somewhere, go elsewhere. Don't fight and don't try to convince, just go elsewhere. You'll be better off, you'll accomplish so much more. And the same is true in personal relationships, and the same as communal issues, go elsewhere. And finally, one more point, because time is short. With the Mittler Rebbe made his own choir, which was also an interesting chiddush in the world of Chabad at the time, where there was always the idea of Nigunim in Chabad, the Alter Rebbe's Niggun that's sing under the chuppah, the Arba Bavas. Today, Baruch Hashem, it's not just the Lubavitch Niggun, but many other kehilas sing the Balatanya's Niggun at the time of the chuppah, which, by the way, I'll tell you a short story. I heard this from the person who it happened to, where he wanted, this was in 1967, I think, he was getting married. He told me this himself. He's a neighbor, not a Lubavitcher, he's more of a Litvisher. He told me that he wanted the Balatanya's Niggun because he had a connection to Chabad through relatives. And his Kala didn't. His Kala wanted Nigunim, I think, the Niggun to be played from, I think, Shlomo Karlbach at the chuppah, walking down a nice, Esa Einai, I forget the Niggun of Shlomo, a beautiful Niggun. So he asked the Rebbe, is it a minik Chabad? Is it a minik Chabad that you must play the Niggun of the Balatanya at the chuppah? The Rebbe didn't answer him, it's a minik Chabad. But this is what the Rebbe said. It's fascinating. The Rebbe said, what is a Niggun? It's the kulmas halev. It's the pen of the soul. It's the neshama. A person nafshe yotza, not just bedabroi, but benegina. The real nefesh is expressed through a nigin, a chsidish nigin. So the Rebbe said, if you want during your chuppah the nefesh of the Alter Rebbe to be there, sing the Alter Rebbe's nigin. And if you want someone else's nigin to be there, sing the other person's nigin. You hear the Rebbe's tremendous insight. On one hand, it's so poshut, but at the same time, the Rebbe put it so succinctly and so simply and so right to the point. A niggin is nefesh. A niggin is soul. Whose soul do you want? You want the Alter Rebbe? You want the Shlomo Karlbach? You want someone else? Fine, no problem. The Mittel Rebbe took this idea of the Nigun and Nigunim, and he formalized it with a choir. Yes, he had a group of Bali Menagim. Today we have the Mezamrim and Shira, and it's so popular. We're a singer, a famous singer even, will have a whole group of a choir, Makehela, like behind him. Well, the Mittel Rebbe already did it. I'm not saying he started it, because of course we had it in the Beis HaMikdash with the Leviim. But you would think that Chabad is a scholar, is intellectual. What's this formal singing together? A niggin in Lubavitch we say it's a zingtzich. It's a zingtzich. It's not that I'm going to press a button. Now, niggin number 1. Press another button, niggin number 2. That's totally opposite and contrary to Chabad ethos, to Chabad philosophy, Chabad ideology. It's a zingtzich. It's a kumtaresh from the nefesh. In other words, if I'm inspired a certain way at a certain time, something comes out with one tune. I'm inspired another way another time, something comes out with another tune. Nevertheless, the Mittel Rebbe says, make a choir, and they would sing, and the famous thing, which we're going to sing now in our section of Nigunim, the Mittel Rebbe's kapella, it's called, the Mittel Rebbe's choir. Going back to Vayetze Yaakov, Be'er Vayelech Chorana, all of this, Beshitas Chabad is to leave your Yaakov, to leave Be'er Sheva, to leave your comfort, and to go into Chareinav Shalolam, to go into the place of wrath, the place of problems, difficulties. And how are you able to go there? Because Vayetze Yaakov mi Be'er Sheva, you have a well of seven powers that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives every year to overcome the difficulties, and that's in every Yid has it. So Vayetze Yaakov Be'er Sheva, Yaakov refers to the Jew, that a Yid needs to get up, Vayetze, and go out, not to sit back for people to come to him or to her, but Vayetze Yaakov, to go out. Mi Be'er Sheva, go away from the Be'er Sheva, the comfort Be'er Sheva. Take with you what you learned as a boy, and you're from yeshiva, and you're from community, and go out to Charoina, go out to Las Vegas, and go out to Timbuktu, and go out to the kibbutzim in Eretz Yisrael, and go out to the surrounding places of Borough Park, and Flatbush, and Williamsburg, and Muncie, and Lakewood, in Jackson. Go make a Yiddish kehillah there. And Baruch Hashem, around here, we're having that done. Yidden have moved to Linden, New Jersey. People have moved to Staten Island. But we mean go out more. And there's so much more places. And guess what? You get a better deal on your real estate. Able to help the schus of the Bala Geula, the Mittel Rebbe, who was released from jail on Yud Kislev. The year before he passed away, and therefore when it came time to celebrate it, they didn't make the celebration the first year. But this was one of the 3 times that the Lubavitcher Rebbe made Fabrengas was Yud Kislev. And Yud Tes Kislev is coming up next week, and we have to prepare ourselves for that. The Rosh of Chassidus, they're able to help, that the schus of the Baal HaGeula and the Baal HaYortzeit, the Baal Yom Haledus, Reb Doiv Ben, and Reb Shneir Zalman, Neshama Haben Aliyah, and Mashiach should come to him together with all Tzadikei Olam, and will be zeicher to see Mashiach Tzidkeinu Yerushalayim Erakodesh Amen v'Yamin.